My name's Khalda Ashrafi. I lead on equalities for the Chief Exec team in Bradford Council, and I'm joined with two colleagues today, Simon Rafiq, and we've got another colleague, I believe, Daniel Wilson, who is with us today. And so our session today is going to focus very much on staff networks and and also looking at the kind of work, the kind of initiatives that our disability staff network are involved in at Bradford Council. So I'm just going to kind of just start us off just by giving you a little bit of overview on the setup of staff networks within Bradford Council, how they're linked to different parts of the organisation, and also, and then Sima will tell you a bit more about the work of the disability staff network within Bradford Council. And then Daniel is going to talk to us a little bit about his experience of being a member of the Disability Staff Network and what he's gained from that. We will have some time at the end for questions, but I'm sure my two colleagues and we don't mind if along the way you want to ask anything as well, that's fine. But we have put some time in at the end for you to ask anything or share any thoughts that you have, or even talk about, some of the initiatives that you might be involved in your own organisations. So the Disability Staff Network obviously is one of a number of networks that we have in the council. So we currently have 7 staff networks, and each of our staff networks. So if I can remember them off the top of my head, so we've got a Disability Staff Network, one for carers. We have the Race Equality Staff Network. We have the Women's Staff Network. Have I already mentioned carers? We have a carers staff network, and we have an LGBTQ plus staff network, a young people's network, and our final network is a BME women's network. So and the BME Women's Network, I guess it is really in recognition of the fact that we don't exist in silos, and there is also the notion of intersectionality that comes into play, where 2 or more protected characteristics can come together, and that experience then of those individuals is very different. And in the council, we really recognise that. And I mean, Sima, who is the lead for the Disability Staff Network, has also had input into the BME Women's Network, and I think there is a real kind of like energy and a real will for that kind of cross-fertilization across staff networks to look at what is common that they can work on together, but also to look at what is very disparate in terms of how different networks need their individuality. So our staff networks, just a very brief overview. So our staff networks in the council are all staff led. So the staff in those networks decide what the course of direction is, what work they're going to focus on, what nature and kind of support that they're going to have. So that's all usually discussed with the steering group, who consult with their members, and then they decide, what they're going to do and how they're going to move forward on that. Each of our staff networks also has a sponsoring director. So their sponsoring director is there for them to offer support, guidance, but most importantly, to give them that link into leadership, so that if there are any thoughts they have, if there are any concerns they have, if there is anything that they feel from their staff network needs to be communicated to senior management, then their director, their sponsoring director, is the person that takes that forward for them. We also make sure that all staff networks are invited to our CMT, which is a council management team, once a quarter. So they have an opportunity not just to update on the work that they're doing, but also to raise any concerns they have, or if there are any particular questions they have. So some of the things that have come up have been, for example, how much time can a staff member have to attend staff networks. So CMT have taken a decision on that now. We also allocate a small budget to them to help them through the year, whether it's about arranging events, or whether it's about they want to invite a speaker and need a small amount of money to make that happen. So there is a small budget that we also give to each of our staff networks at the moment, and that's something that it's only very small, but it's something that helps them along and to do things. So just in terms of their development, the staff networks do different things and they're progressing at different rates. So like the BME Women's Staff Network only came about probably 5 to 6 months ago. The Young People's Network has just launched, and in fact I had a meeting with them yesterday to talk about some of the work that they're interested in doing. And I've deliberately not said much about the Disability Staff Network because we've got Sima here who's going to tell you more about it. So if it's okay, I'll hand over now to Sima, who's one of the leads for the Disability Staff Network at Bradford Council. So, Simon's just going to put into context really how their network came about, what kind of areas of focus they have, what they offer to members, and she'll talk you through all of that. So Sima, I'm going to hand over to you.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah, I'm just going to say that there might be some background noise which I can't do anything about because there's some work going on outside my office. So hopefully you'll be able to hear me. There's quite a bit of drilling, but I can't move my equipment, obviously. So as Calder said, my name's Simon Rafiq and I'm the lead for the Disability Staff Network. I am visually impaired, hence I don't have my camera on because I'm sat in the dark because that's the environment that suits my needs. So just to tell you a bit about the Disability Staff Network, we were formed towards the end of 2020, following some focus groups on protective characteristics. The Disability Staff Network currently has 79 members, including a strategic director, and that's out of 371 people that have declared they have a disability at Bradford Council. So I think that's quite a good number of people that we have, a percentage. Our staff network, as I said, I'm the chair. It's made up of myself, the chair, the vice chair, and we have two other colleagues. So we have a steering group. So that's 4 of us in the Disability Staff Network steering group. When we had our first meeting in April 2021, we kind of had an open meeting where we wanted staff because it was a new staff network and it's not something that we'd had before, and especially because it was led by disabled staff. We wanted to give staff an opportunity to sort of have a voice and actually share their lived experience of working in a local authority and raise any issues they had. So following that initial first meeting, the steering group went away and we looked at some themes that were came out of that meeting, because we were very focused on that. We wanted to be an action orientated group. We didn't want to be just a talking shop, as sometimes the staff networks can be. So straight away from that first meeting, we went away and we sort of took some key points from that meeting, and we came up with there were 4 themes that we wanted to work on, and those 4 themes were IT. So if you're anybody with a disability who uses assistive tech or any other kind of equipment, you can understand that can be quite a big issue to get around. And then there was we created a work plan, and it is a work plan, but actually when I go through it, the key priorities of it all actually come under HR. So that was an area in itself that we were looking at. And then another area was disability confident, whether the council was disability confident, and to achieve that we worked on a survey. And then the last area was health and well-being. And if you look, and really, to be fair, all 4 areas kind of interlink. They're like kind of 4 pieces of a jigsaw that kind of come together, to join up. As I said, those were the 4 areas that we kind of looked at, and straight away, because of the champion that we had, this corporate management team champion, we were lucky enough to have the director of IT and finance. So obviously one of the areas that we were working on was IT. So straight away we kind of literally just started to sort of deal with those issues. And one of the main issues were that at the council here, we have a help desk. So as a disabled person, when you ring the help desk and you're constantly having to explain to the person taking the call that you have a disability and this is what, when they're asking you questions, it's like it can be really frustrating every time that you ring up, and the time it takes for your issues to be resolved. Because if just on a personal experience, as I said, I use assistive tech, I have certain equipment. If that equipment doesn't work for any reason, that's it. I can't work. I can't jump onto another machine. So that's me done with, and it can take up sometimes weeks, months to actually resolve issues. And that was one of the biggest frustrations that our members were having around IT. So what we tried to do to resolve that was we created a form, and it was kind of it was going to resolve two issues, because what we created the form around to send out to members so that they could put on there what assistive tech they used and what their additional needs would be, whether that would be if you were dyslexic, so that the caller at the other end could they knew, they worked around your needs. But the form was also going to help to create a catalogue within the council of what assistive tech we use, because at the moment we don't have that. So there were people that were on various software, and we were on different versions, and the help desk didn't know who was on what version and which colleague was using which software. So that form has been a positive thing, because it's helped us gain a catalogue of what people are using, and also help the help desk when a member of staff with a disability rings up, because obviously they when they take the call, they're not aware unless we make them aware of it. But it can be frustrating, like I said, to do it every time. So something flags up. If I call up IT, something will flag up on their system to say, it's Simon Rafiq, she's got a visual impairment, she uses this technology, and then that call handler will deal with that call, once it's using that information. So I think that was straight away, I said, one of the positive things that came out of the staff network. As I said, we created a HR work plan, and I'll just share with you, because this is kind of one of the biggest areas of our staff network. And again, this is from information, all feedback that we had from members of the staff network. So one of the issues that we wanted to look at was disability leave. Now, disability leave is an additional amount of days that a member of that a disabled member of staff is entitled to, which doesn't come out of their sick leave, and it's to do with their disability. So, like if I, for example, what could I say? I had a hospital appointment, so I was seeing a specialist for my eyes or something like that. That wouldn't come out of my own time. That would come under disability leave. Or if I was off work, healthy, everything else was fine, but the only reason I was off work was because it was maybe my contact lenses or my glasses that I use. I couldn't come to work for that reason because they weren't available. So that's to do with my disability. So that would come out of that leave. And there seemed to be a lot of inconsistency around that, and that was something that we kind of raised in our work plan, and we're currently looking at reviewing that, because it became apparent that some staff members were aware of it, some staff members weren't, managers weren't. So basically, as I said, the HR work plan that we have is kind of trying to also increase training within managers to understand disabilities, to understand the policies that the council has, because there seems to be a lot of different interpretation of them. So there's some colleagues that are actually seeing the positives and using those, and then there's the other colleagues that are failing, and not getting that, and then having to sort of go through capability and disciplinary and such things, which can obviously cause a lot of stress. So as I said, we're ensuring that there's training sessions for middle managers to cover explicitly their responsibilities in relation to the workplace and equality, and what they should be doing about it, and how they can how they can set expectations for leadership. We're showcasing and we're celebrating role models from disabled staff groups through our our visibility in council communications. We want to, and then there's other work that we want to do, like we want to increase the percentage of disabled members of staff whose request for reasonable adjustments have been made adequately and managed and fulfilled, because again, that's another area where it can take you can make, you can request, I can have a meeting with my manager, I can request I need reasonable adjustments, and then the time it takes for that to move forward. And obviously, as I said, if I don't have the right equipment, I can't do my job. And obviously trying to increase the profile of the staff networks, trying to get out to people who don't have access to email, to let them know that we're here, we're a voice for them, and that we're a safe space where they can share their share their concerns and raise any issues that they may have, and then we can take them further up to up towards, as Calder said before, when we attend CMT, our corporate management team. So those are those issues there. Just bear with me. Like I said, I've got some notes here, so I'm having to switch through different screens. I mean, has anybody got any questions? Just while, Calder, I don't know if there's anything on the chat because I won't be able to see it if there is.
I'm keeping an eye on the chat, so we haven't got any comments or questions in the chat as yet. But I was just thinking, Simon, it might be useful for you to just even give a bit of an overview of the kind of, like the kind of issues and the kind of like.
Yeah. I'm just going to get onto that. Yeah.
So, points that your members raise.
Yeah. So as I said, for myself as chair, obviously we've got the 4 areas, but just it's become apparent, obviously, and I've had personal experience of this because just before the staff networks were set up, I went through something to do with my disability, and I felt I didn't have anybody to talk to, so and it kind of really affected my mental health. And that's one of the reasons, obviously, I put myself forward to lead on the staff network, because I didn't want anybody else to go through that. And one thing that has really become apparent, that there was a need for the staff network, because I've kind of become an advocate now. So I'm supporting quite a few disabled staff with issues at the moment, on an ongoing basis, but there's a few specific cases I'm supporting where I'm either, supporting them at meetings with their managers to help their managers understand their needs, and because they don't feel confident enough, or they're too scared, because you just, like, when you have a conversation with the manager, sometimes it can be like, you can say to them you've got a disability, and then you kind of expect them to maybe ask a few more questions, and they don't, and then you think, well, okay, I'm not really getting any kind of a positive, I don't feel comfortable talking to them about my needs. So I've sat in on meetings where colleagues I've given them a voice, and they felt more confident to sort of express their needs to managers. So that's that one. I've done that one, and I've got kind of, sorry, I've got this noise going on in the background, which is stopping me from. It's just taking my thought out of my head.
Don't worry, Simon. Just take your time. You're doing great.
Yeah, it's like literally, it's just. But as I said, yeah, that's that area, and I was going to say there's something recently. Oh, and there was recently I had a colleague join the council, and he wasn't sure how he should go about, if he could ask for reasonable adjustments, how he should go about them, because. And he was made aware of the staff network, and I kind of like spoke to him, guided him, and was able to secure his equipment actually quite easily. He didn't even have to go through the process, because I signposted him to the he had a visual impairment, but I signposted him to the sensory needs centre that we have in Bradford, and they were able to loan him equipment so that he could actually start doing his job while he was waiting for his reasonable adjustments to be put in place. And I think that helped him a lot, because at least he felt he could start his work from day one. And then I have sorry, sorry, can you hear me? Yeah, I can't hear myself, but
no, we can hear you. We can hear you.
Yeah, really sorry about this. So that's that. I mean, just hope I've covered everything. I don't know, Calder, is anything? I think, yeah, I know we had a conversation, didn't we? I might have forgotten.
Yeah. No. I mean, I think in terms of what the network does and some of the examples of where, there's been positive, work that's happened, I think, I have to say that the fact that the Disability Staff Network have, gone to the effort of putting together a work plan that centres on 4 separate areas of improvement. I think it's really important to note that this work, it's staff network members all have full-time jobs and they all do other things, but it's their will and their commitment that has made them come together to do this. And this program of work that CIMA's Disability Network have put together is now what is being run through the organisation in those 4 areas, and they are now including those 4 areas in their own service delivery plans to make sure that those changes happen. We agree, I mean, we know that everything won't happen overnight and at this like instantly, but the fact that that initiative has come from the staff networks, their lived experience has guided the council to understand what needs to happen. And the other thing to say to that, just to add to what Simon said, is a lot of the kind of points that CIMA's Disability Staff Network are raising in terms of improvements won't just be improvements will benefit disabled members of staff. They will also benefit other members of staff. So I just think it's, really, really, really inspiring the work that they're doing. And, one of my roles is to make sure that that work plan is actually now actioned. Simon, the other thing that I was just going to ask if you wanted to say anything about was, I mean, obviously intersectionality is a key part of what we said we'd, touch on today. And
yeah, obviously, as I said, I fit into the BME women. I've sort of assisted in the BME network. There's also the women's network. So kind of, there is a lot of, as you said, the intersectionality. And as a disabled, right? So for me, it's like as a woman, it's hard. As a BME woman, it's even harder. But as a disabled BME woman, it's like, there's so many challenges out there personally that I won't go through can't go through them all now, but that I've had myself and probably other people. And I think sometimes people forget that, but I think just having generally the staff networks, and especially after going back to the disability staff network, I found it that even for me, I might not have realised this, but there's things that I actually feel, I've probably kept sort of like hidden, inside, and now I feel that I'm more confident and I can share my experiences because it's, as I said, for me it's really important that I give a voice to other people, but then also because I've given them a voice, it's also given me confidence to speak out against things or to ask for things that I would have thought, I'm too scared to ask about this, and actually even to become more comfortable with my own disability. I'm comfortable that I do have a disability, because I think sometimes you kind of, you don't, you have, but you don't want to admit it. But when you're around other people that actually understand you and you understand them, you have that empathy, and you don't have to pretend to be someone. You can be your true self. I think that's what it's done for me, and I hope that's what it's done for our network members.
Thanks for that. Is there anything else, Simon, you want to add at this point? Or should we open to questions and then we'll ask
open
Daniel
to questions, and then obviously my colleague Daniel, who I haven't bribed, so it's all him. He can say how he thinks the network's benefited to him. So I'm happy. If there's any questions.
So at this point, are there any comments, any questions, anything anyone wants to ask or share?
I just wanted to thank. Can anybody hear me? I don't know. I'm wearing a headset. Thank you. I just wanted to thank you for going through that, and I think it just highlights, I think, that there is a lack of awareness, and I think that from what I've dealt with managing my own disability and having the support to put things into place and to use access to work and to use reasonable adjustments. There's a lot of knowledge that's required for things like this. And I think sometimes as well, having a manager as well that is fully aware of how you implement reasonable adjustments and how access to work operates as well, just having that makes the journey easier. But I've coming across lots of different people that don't necessarily have that sort of knowledge base. And I think sometimes it can be very difficult for people. So I just wanted to congratulate you on actually bringing people together and saying, look, what are the issues and how can we tackle it? And like I said in the chat, I would really like to join. I think I would benefit from the lessons that everybody's sort of sharing together, and how we can move this forward and how we can make it so that when there is, you know, barriers, like for example, if somebody needs access to system one, how people go about that, if they're sharing that with a support worker, how that affects data protection. There's so many things that you know, disabilities require knowledge around the HR and the processes and all of those types of things. So I think by having that network, we can not only help ourselves, but also create that pathway. And I think that's what we're talking about creating accessible pathways for people to actually make this easier, because it's almost as though, from my own experience, it's a job in itself. I'm 4 months into this, and I still haven't got everything up and running because I've had to go through access to work. I've got to go through different things and do different things. And I'm very lucky that I've had very good managers to support me and to understand that that's what I'm dealing with. But if I didn't have that, I think I would struggle, because that would affect my mental health. And I'm still not up to speed. I'm still not doing things in the efficient way that I want to do them. And just like everybody else wants to do them. And, you know, having that time frame, I still haven't got my support worker yet. I've got some of my equipment. I still haven't had a lot of my training. It's a separate job in itself to get your support and to get that running, and it to be, you know, a smooth transition for that to happen is difficult. So I think it's a great opportunity, and that's why I put my email in the chat. And I would really like to be part of that, because I just think that I could learn so much from other people as well, and also share what I've learned. So thank you for sharing us. It's amazing.
Thank you.
That was great, and thank you for sharing, Samira. I mean, I think it's really valuable to hear real people's, you know, lived experience of what they're currently going through. So if there's anything, I've just noticed, obviously you're an employee with Bradford Council. So if you feel the network can support you in any way, or you feel that I can support you anyway, because I lead on strategically on equalities, then please do get in touch, and, you know, we'll see what we can do to progress, you know, any kind of issues that you're currently dealing with.
Thank you. I really appreciate that.
Samira, we've got a meeting next week, so if you do, I might add you to our list and send you out. I'll send you an invite. Yep.
Please do. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Welcome.
So I'm just going to bring in a couple of other people that have put their hands up. So Daryl, how are we doing, Daryl? Lovely to see you again. Please take the floor.
It's really following on from the Samira's experience and what's already been discussed. It's about corporate learning, really. So how does the system learn so that it's not left to in this case the Disability Staff Network to do all of the advocating time and time again for an individual? Where is the sharing of the knowledge and the skilling up of the managers, so that they understand what their responsibilities are and where they can go to get the right support, so that things happen a lot more smoothly and quickly, and people get the appropriate support in a timely manner, rather than needing somebody to be the ankle biter to champion that for that person who's really struggling.
I like the use of the term ankle biter.
We in the old Strategic Disability Partnership, we had an award called the Ankle Biter Award.
Really?
Yeah, we did. We handed it out every now and then. Anyway, long story. Yeah.
But no, I mean, would anyone like to make a response to Daryl's comments? I would, but I mean, I feel like I've done a lot of talking already. Is there anyone that wants to come in on that? I know we've got other EDI lead people here as well. All right, I'll just very quickly then say, from a Bradford point of view, we recognise that everything is not where it should be. I think it would be fair to say that the work that the Disability Network has done has kind of like speared us into action a little bit. One of the things that we are going to work on is a disability strategy that will encompass not just the training that managers need. And I know, Daryl, we need to have a follow-up conversation on that, we've had an initial conversation on it, but also the other facets of work that need to happen in order for our disabled members of staff to be able to not go through, for example, what Samira's going through right now. So having to wait in order to be, in order to just do, their job. So those are the kind of things that we are looking at. We know that we're not there yet, but this is why like organized events like this are really, really helpful. And that's why we really want to.
I suppose what I'm saying,
Darryl, sorry,
having a history of this is learn from past mistakes, because the corporate learning didn't happen. And that is the risk to the organisation, and it becomes Simon's done some amazing work there, and Simon's obviously a very strong advocate for herself and others, and that's a lot of energy and weight on an individual to have to take, because Simon is motivated to do that. It's about making sure that the support networks are there to move that forward is the first thing. The second thing I just want to say is I want to say congratulations, that it's up and running. It's obviously a very strong voice, and along with that continue and for it to grow, to continue to be effective. One of the difficulties in the previous iteration of a staff network was who were the people that could have a voice within the network and who struggled. And the ones that struggled tended to be people who their work didn't revolve around computers. So lots of manual staff, lots of people who work in recreational services or whatever, and there are a number of disabled people who are in those proportionately within the organisation, within the council. Probably a high percentage of people work within those sorts of services who would self-identify as disabled. So are they hooked in? And how accessible is that process?
Right. I mean, you make a really good point there, Darryl. I mean, I know you, Darryl, because you were when you had the staff network here at the council years ago. That's one of the important things that we've kind of looked at as a staff network. And just recently, I asked that question: how many people, when I actually got the list together, how many people declared a disability? And I know that there are people out there at the moment. I've been told there's about 50 people actually who don't have access to email. There's probably more than that, but then that's something, like I said, we as a steering group need to sort of sit down and try and see how we can get out to them, because obviously the problem is at the moment, because of the way that everybody's working, it's like we're doing this over Teams. There's no face-to-face meeting. So I've kind of asked if I can have information of what departments they come under their managers, so I can try and get communication to their managers so that the managers can feed that on. As I said, that is another piece of work that we are actually looking at, because as I said, that was one of the other important bits that kind of came out at the conversations that we had.
Okay, thanks for that, and really valid points, Darryl. And I think those are certainly thoughts that not just as a council we want to take, but I know I can see that there are other equality leads on the call as well from other organisations. I just wanted to come to Peter Neverson. You've had your hand up a while. Sorry, it's taken us so long to get to you.
Yeah, mine's actually, there were a point about the disability confident employee confidence scheme. That employers quite often state, and Simon covered this. And what I found recently is, and this isn't aimed at Bradford Council, this is aimed at a number of companies, is people quite often say that they're part of that scheme, but they're not applying the principles. So I think if we're going to look at those schemes, if employers are looking at those schemes, they really need to be applying that and thinking about, so interviews, for instance, how do you make interviews inclusive for those people with disability needs? Because they don't do it, they pay lip service to it, and that's my experience. Through recent interviews, some companies do it, some pay lip service to it. So we need, if we're going to do that in organisations, and I do work for Bradford, so if Bradford does that, they really need to take that point seriously, really.
Agreed. Sonia, you just popped your hand up there.
Yeah. Hi there, everyone. I work at BTHFT, so Bradford Teaching Hospitals Trust. Really great to be on the call with you all today. And thank you, Simon, for sharing. It was a really great to listen to you and to be to hear from your experiences. So my role is I work part-time at BTHFT. A lot of my work is centred on staff equality networks as well, aside from some other core work. We had a session this morning that myself and my colleague Ruth ran on disability declaration, and it's coming back to some points, Daryl, you've made, Peter, and also Samira, that you've said. I think there's something about, for me, really about how to really harness that trust value in terms of psychological safety for our colleagues and for our organisations, whatever capacity we work in, be it in the council, be it in sort of job centre, wherever we are. I think for me that's really core to some of this, because I sort of lead on the working with our 3 staff networks. We have our LGBT network, we have our race equality one, and we have our Enable, which is our we've recently relaunched and refreshed our staff equality networks. It was in time of the 11th of May when it was the official day of networks, and the network in consultation have really refreshed their terms of reference, and we've encompassed that to broaden it to cover disability by association, long-term conditions, to really all encompass our members and our colleagues that are dealing with the multiplicity of our identities within our workspaces. So we may be somebody that have a sort of long-term condition or a disability. We might also be a carer. We may also be like myself. I'm a sort of a woman from a South Asian background. I'm a single parent. I'm a carer for my poorly mum, who is really, really unwell on palliative care now. And juggling all that and having a safe space to say, actually, and with Enable, with our staff network, I also have a long-term condition, which is an autoimmune condition. But I've had to really go to a place of my own sense of considered vulnerability to share that with my team. So if I have a flare-up, we're able to manage and support that. So it comes back down to a sense of psychological safety for me that is really authentic within our work practice and cultures, is truly inclusive and impactful, and not lip service to consultation, because that is at the heart of, if somebody wants to declare, I mean, our session this morning was on declaration. People are not going to want to declare if there's that fear around declaring of how that will impact maybe within your work capacity, in your career progression. That's a real fear with the Enable network that I work with. I mean, there's a real fear around that. So I think we have a duty of care for creating a real a true to practice a duty of care around how people can disclose, declare, and safety around that. And I think staff networks, for me, that's at the heart of it. I mean, I've come into my role from a non-NHS background. I've only been a year in post. I worked 2.5 days, and I came in after a career break. I came in from working in the youth service, so and also sort of my formative years, and also within academia, within the Peace Studies department. So I bring a wealth of different experiences into my role, and I think there's a real sense of just the power of networks is really about making sure that the voice isn't lip service to consultation. I think it's great at the council you have it links into the senior management structures. We have the similar process. So we have our quarterly EDC, which is our Equality Diversity Council meetings. So our chair or deputy chair would have a platform at that. So it's really about sort of supporting the networks in terms of making sure that gets taken forward, and it's not just a space to, I think there's levels of networks, it's a space to come together and support one another, but it's really about moving that conversation a practical level forward to make sure it's a broader sense of true equity and equality. So I think that's just kind of a little point I'm saying. I think these conversations are so important and integral, and I'm glad we're having this festival this time around. There's going to be a lot of learning for us as a collective, of reflections on our practice, of how we can improve. I look forward to them conversations. I know me and Daryl have had conversations away from the sort of building up to the festival, but for me the excitement about this is having the power of this is lived experiences. We all bring a wealth to it in our capacities, and it's just creating that sense of safety for true, authentic, impactful sort of change within our practice and cultures at work. So just thank you for being here, and thank you. I can talk a lot, so I do apologise, but I will start sort of rein it in a little bit and send it back to everyone else. But just thank you for being here. It's great for me to listen to you all as well. So thank you.
Thanks for that, Sonia. That was really very passionate and very heartfelt, and I hope received in the manner that it was offered. But thank you for sharing that. I want to bring in our final speaker today, which is Daniel Wilson. Daniel is going to share with us some of his lived experience and his experience of being part of the Disability Staff Network. So over to you, Daniel. Sorry you've had to wait, but really glad that you're here and really looking forward to hearing what you've got to share with us.
Thanks, Calder. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yeah.
Lovely. I'll do a bit of background. I've worked for Bradford Council for just over 3 years now in total. I'm currently in my third role in a bit of a strange way within the council. I had 2 years in business support in children's social care, which went right through the pandemic. So I did a lot of finance work, including sort of distribution of cash to families in absolute desperate need at times, all the way through the pandemic. I then moved across into a small team that deals with paying special guardians and adopters and the various financial payments to do with those and one or two other financial schemes on behalf of children's and adult services. That was November 2021. I'm now business support in HR, doing a lot of work on the finance side of procurement within HR, which at the moment is also involved with procurement for the new Bradford Children's Trust, which is coming into being in next April. So we've been very, very busy, and I've been very much sort of learning on the job. But all that combined with having autism, that's my disability, and it brings its own very different challenges than say a lot of physical disabilities are. Obvious maybe isn't the right word, but they are seen, and there are sort of very sort of a lot more structured ways of getting help, and it's a lot clearer what people need. And I think the biggest thing I've found is I've struggled to have my own voice in knowing what I need and what is going to help me. In my first role, I found that the nature of the service was that everybody was so busy that nobody had time to listen to me and understand what I needed. And when I did find somebody who understood me and actually wanted to listen to me, the nature of the way things were was that she wasn't around very long. And then you move on to your next manager, and it's, you know, it's all, and rightly so, it's all centered around, you know, the children's services was all centered around the service users and the children, but there wasn't a lot of support for somebody like me with a disability who, you know, at times I struggled, especially where things were grey areas, was what is one of my big things. You know, I do black and I do white, so I don't do grey. And it was a real struggle in children's services. And I joined the Disability Staff Network. I can't remember if it was the very first meeting, but it was certainly by the second one. And we had quarterly meetings, and by the meeting in October last year, I'd got to a point where I think I'd sat through the July meeting, and somebody had shared a fairly similar experience to what I was having. And I sat there and went, that's me, that's me, that's me, and came out with my situation. And it was one of those meetings where the network were establishing the various themes of issues, and it was all the same themes. Like I say, I got a different role in a different department. Managed to get out of children's services. Sounds really blunt, but I knew I needed to be somewhere where I thought and I hoped I would get more support. And unfortunately found that I was being compared against previous colleagues who didn't have the disabilities I had. My learning time was compared against previous colleagues who didn't have working from home going on, didn't have sort of post-COVID issues going on in the way that the training was done, various things, that circumstances that happened. But basically I got told I wasn't good enough for the role I was doing and got pushed across into what I'm doing now and told that would be better for me. And I'm never really going to know whether that's one's better than the other, because actually what I've been doing for the last 6 months, and looks like, despite what everybody's been saying the last couple of weeks, I'm still doing part of my old role and part of my new role whilst being expected to learn the rest of my new role and the time pressures that all go with it. And it's difficult. The circumstances going on at the moment, literally a circumstance that has happened today which will pull me further back into my old role than perhaps what was going to be targeted to be happening over the next few weeks. Nothing anybody can do about the fact that a colleague's probably going to be on compassionate leave by the end of the week, just through circumstances. But that's the way it is. But for me, it's hard. I come into work and not know what I'm doing from one day to the next. Sometimes it is challenging. But the thing that's, before I joined the council, I had a job for 6 months and I ended up off sick with stress. And at times I've been pretty close to that in Bradford Council. But the thing I found with the Disability Staff Network is I could relate to the things that people were saying. It was a safe space to be able to share what was going on and to actually have a person at times, or people, to actually say, to actually be able to go and listen, actually sit and listen, and then go, right, you've got this, and this that you need to sort out, because it's separate issues. So I had disability issues, I had equality issues. I've got some personal stuff in there, but it's dealing with being able to actually go, right, you've got these issues and you need to talk to somebody about this and seek help with that, and actually be able to tell me and help me formulate a way forward. And I'd love to sit here and say that everything's wonderful. It's not right now, and it's far from it. But eventually I got an occupational health referral made after a very difficult summer period. I'm sorry to say that it took 3 managers in my service 5 weeks to actually make the occupational health referral. And it's going through process, and actually we had a relatively constructive meeting last week. I've been supported by the Disability Staff Network through the beginnings of it, actually strongly persuaded by members' reactions to actually join a union, which was a scary thing to do. And actually, whilst the direct support now is coming from a union because it needs to be that a bit more sort of formalised support, without the help of the Disability Staff Network I'd have never got there. I think that for me is the strongest thing for the network, is you're not on your own. And when you have a cognitive disability, you can't formulate it all yourself. I can't always see the bigger picture. I can only see what's here and now and this big brick wall in front of me. And you actually need other people to actually, and it's got to be the right other people. You need some people who will listen and actually work with you. And I know the Disability Staff Network, those running it, do a lot in their own time. And on a personal level, I am extremely grateful for that. Do I think it's right? No, but it's the nature of what it is. I'd love to be able to do more for the Disability Staff Network. I don't know whether I would have the mental capacity to do it at times. But I'm tied by, and some of it's my situation. You're a little bit tied sometimes with how much time is available to do things. There's all sorts of issues, and there's lots of things being worked on. There's been a lot of progress. There's a lot of work to do. Don't anybody think that running a staff network or being involved in a staff network is an easy thing. It's easy to turn up to a meeting every 3 months and listen and maybe give an odd opinion, or not so it's easy to pour your guts out sometimes if you're in that sort of situation, because some people it's not. But that's the easy bit. It is a challenge to run a network that is representing so many different people, so many different circumstances, so many different disabilities. My disability is completely different to that of others. My disability isn't defined. Autism is a spectrum, and that's one of the hardest things that you see. I have it with my managers at the moment, where they have this perception of what autism is, but they don't apply it to me as an individual. And I think I'm lucky because I've got family members who have got autism. My cousin is non-verbal autistic. My stepson is autistic, albeit we are 3 different people, very different people. And that's the biggest thing with people with disabilities, is taking the guidance that's out there, taking the advice, taking the suggested measures to help XYZ, relating which bits and how much of which bits relate to the person that you're dealing with, and not making those assumptions. And I think the biggest thing for me is feeling comfortable that I've been understood. And then we move forward. We can put things in place. We can discuss things. But I know from my disability that if I'm not comfortable in an environment, I will just shut down. I've sat in meetings before now and got shut down. I want to just run out the door. You can't do that in a meeting with your manager, but equally, I've had meetings and I've had 20 minutes of being talked at and gone, I haven't got a flipping clue what they've just said. And that's the biggest thing, I think, with people with disabilities, is not everybody will want to open up in a big group of people. It's finding the right environment for those people to be able to open up, to be able to talk. And the Disability Staff Networks really helped me with that, both on a group level and on a sometimes one-to-one level with individuals. And it's a really powerful thing on a personal level as well as a corporate level. And I think on a corporate level, there's so much. It's frustrating looking in and going, there's all these things that are happening sometime, and that's just the nature of a large organization. It kind of makes you go, for me now, where I am, what can I do to help? The answer is I don't know what I can do to help sometimes, because you have to trust in the people that are doing things behind the scenes and following due process, that things will get better. But if I sit there and stay silent and don't say what's going on, no one's going to be able to help me. no one's going to be able to help my colleagues who have got the same problems. I started when somebody gave their experience and I went, that's me. When you're one lone voice speaking out, you've got very little chance of being heard. If you can be a group of people speaking out and going, I've got this, so's he, so's she, then people have to listen. Don't always get the answers we want, but at least we're being heard. And that's the power of the staff network, because it's coordinating things, it's giving people a voice, and it's working for the better good.
Daniel, thank you so much for sharing your story with us, and also sharing some of the challenges that you face. I know that when we talk about things that are personal to us, it's not easy. It's not easy to share that. But, you know, the learning that you've shared with us today and your experiences, not just within what you're currently going through, but also what support you've managed to gain through the staff networks. I think that's been really, really valuable to hear. So I just wanted to thank you so much for sharing that. I notice there are a couple of hands up, and we're also kind of like up against the clock a little bit. So if I could bring in, I think Samira, you might have put your hand up first, and then I'll bring in Daryl if that's okay.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to say thank you for sharing your story. That was just, it just triggered so many emotions. And I think for me, it triggered a reflection that perhaps I don't think I've ever shared. And I think the reflection is, for me, what I've done is I experienced so many people, managers and people that were supposed to guide, support, and nurture people. And what I decided to do subconsciously was go somewhere where I didn't have to fight that fight, where I didn't have to explain, where I didn't have to sell it to people. Because I think the coping strategy I used was, don't worry, there's no cost to you. Access to work will do it. And I used to remember that as my strap line wherever I worked. Don't worry, no cost. There's no cost involved. Access to work will do it. But then I decided, after retraining and doing social work, that I was going to take that power back. I was going to find somewhere where I felt represented. And I think hearing what I'm hearing today is, yes, I found somewhere where I'm represented in Bradford Council, in a disability team, working for people with disabilities. And that has given me my niche, that has given me my standing. And I've developed so much, and being able to share my experiences with other people and not have to step in a room with a manager and say, you know, don't worry about that. But I also always say as well, I think this is another strapline I use, is don't worry, I understand we have a service that needs to be provided, and the service comes first. You know, I'm still leading with that. I'm still going in with that selling point, so that people say, you know, oh, no, you have a disability though. No. Actually, I realise the service comes first. And that's showing that I don't have that naivety into saying that all of my reasonable adjustments are going to be achievable. It shows that I have an understanding of the employer, which is something I do, just, I don't know why, but I still, an element of it's still there. But I think what today has shown me is that, yes, I have found that place, but really all of the places should be that place. And I think by joining this group, that maybe we can action some of that change. And maybe what I need to do now is move those experiences, those skills, that knowledge into this group, and then move that forward. So every workplace is a workplace that somebody with a disability wants to be, not a selective place that we want to be. Everybody should feel that they have people that are represented and neurodiverse, and understand. It's so empowering to work in a team where a manager has got a a disability and is dyslexic like yourself, and sort of says, oh, okay, but how does your dyslexia affect you, knowing full well that we are not all the same, you know? And I think that should just be the norm. And I want that to be the norm. And I think it's about time that it is the norm, because I'm a bit fed up of it not being the norm. So I just want to say thank you for everybody for sharing what they have. And it's given me an opportunity to not only be the one that supports people with access to work in my team, and also with the projects that are happening in Bradford. In January, I'll be delivering a presentation on access to work for students that are planning to be in employment who have disabilities. So I'm using the knowledge everywhere I can, in every area. And I think this is the final sort of nice bit of the piece of the jigsaw, really. So I just feel really empowered, and just I can't wait to be part of that group to do that. And I think that's just a really special thing, really. So just thought I'd share that. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing that, Samira. And I can really, take on, in my mind, what points you've raised about yourself, but also about processes. So I think that is something we should definitely pick up again. I just wanted to bring it down. I know you've put a note in the chat, but just while we've still got a few people on the line, did you want to just have the final word?
I think Alina's hand's up. I've put my hand down. I think it was more or less cool. I just want to say thank you, Daniel, and everybody who's given of themselves to raise awareness and understanding. It's just a plea that that organisations do learn, and that it's not left for people to put themselves out there and have to be so give so much energy of themselves to an organisation. The organisation needs to create that culture so that it's supportive in its approach, and so that it's less otherwise it's easy just to actually for people to be picked off one by one, and for the people to not to have a voice, and for people to struggle, and then we lose people from the organisations, and that's not what it's about. Ironic, I think, in Daniel's experience, that he worked in children's services, and we've looked after children and what have you, and I speak as a foster carer, and I know how informed we are required to be in terms of our knowledge around in autism spectrum and other conditions and what have you, and yet that department seems to be struggling with its own learning. So there's a training issue there, clearly. Anyway, thank you. Good session.
Great stuff. Well, I think we're just on 3 minutes past 2, and I think it's probably fair for us to call the session to a close. But before we do that, I just wanted to offer my sincere thanks to both Simon and Daniel, who came and very bravely shared an awful lot of things that were not just about organisations, they're about their own experiences. And I hope that we can take that away and think about how those things need to change, and what we need to do in order to empower our staff networks to be able to make the working lives of our staff better, particularly our disabled staff better. So if that's okay, then thank you so much for joining us today. It's been really, really great to be here. It's been great to hear from all of you that have been on the call, and I look forward to linking up with you all soon at some point. Thank you. Enjoy the rest of the programme as well.